It is 11:42 p.m. on a Sunday, and the relentless, driving rain is lashing against the ancient stone and stained glass windows of Windsor Castle. There are no cameras here, no polite smiles for the press, only the harsh, violent sound of screeching tyres echoing across the gravel courtyard as elite royal protection officers physically escort a high-ranking Sussex emissary off the sovereign grounds. Inside the damp, echoing halls, the atmosphere is suffocating and thick with unprecedented constitutional panic. King Charles III sits behind a heavy mahogany desk, his breathing shallow, his hands visibly shaking as the ink dries on a document that will alter British history forever: the emergency order of Severance. With the definitive stroke of a sovereign pen, a $45 million royal trust fund vanishes into thin air, its assets frozen indefinitely under the cover of darkness. We have obtained the exclusive, terrifying details of what pushed the reigning monarch to this catastrophic breaking point. Specifically, the leaked, highly classified contents of page 42 of the legendary Red Dossier. Before we expose the explosive truth hidden within these sealed royal documents, palace lawyers are working overtime right now, employing aggressive digital injunctions, attempting to scrub this very information from the internet. Do not let them silence the truth. Hit the like button immediately and subscribe to this channel so you never miss these highly restricted, uncensored updates from the dark heart of the monarchy. To comprehend the sheer, devastating magnitude of the Windsor Directive, we must rewind the clock exactly 72 hours to trace the genesis of this royal apocalypse. It is October 14th, 3:15 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. A bleak, overcast afternoon in London conceals a covert operation of unprecedented constitutional severity. MI5 cyber intelligence operatives, monitoring secure, encrypted communications under a highly sensitive domestic threat mandate, intercept a massive digital package transmitting across the Atlantic. This is not another ghost-written autobiography filled with petty familial grievances, nor is it a simple, tearful television interview script designed to manipulate public sympathy. It is the finalized, heavily guarded draft of a devastating new financial memoir, meticulously engineered to target the very foundation of the Crown's private wealth. The intercepted manuscript contains forensic-level accounting of the Duchy of Cornwall and the Duchy of Lancaster, threatening to expose century-old tax loopholes, shadow investments, and sovereign asset structures designed by royal courtiers to bypass modern public scrutiny. Intelligence analysts staring at the glowing monitors immediately realized that the publication of these documents would not just spark a public relations nightmare, it would trigger an immediate, catastrophic economic crisis for the British monarchy, unraveling 1,000 years of financial secrecy in a matter of days. The threat is instantaneously classified as a Tier 1 sovereign emergency. Within minutes of the interception, the Prime Minister's office is notified via a secure red line, and an emergency crisis management team is hastily assembled deep within the subterranean, nuclear-proof bunkers of Whitehall. The strategy outlined in the intercepted Sussex manuscript is recognised as a direct, undeniable assault on the sovereign grant recalibration protocols, a calculated attempt to weaponize global public outrage and systematically defund the institution from the ground up. This was the ultimate, unforgivable red line. For years, the firm had absorbed the televised betrayals, the endless podcast complaints, and the relentless, calculated barrage of media victimhood, playing a grueling, long game of dignified silence. But this intercepted intelligence proved that the prodigal son had returned, not with an olive branch of reconciliation, but with a sharpened financial guillotine. The tragic patriarch, King Charles, a man who had spent the last 2 years desperately, perhaps foolishly, trying to leave a back door open for his youngest child's return, is finally forced to face the agonizing, inescapable reality that his own flesh and blood is actively coordinating the fiscal destruction of the House of Windsor. The palace's response to this existential, apocalyptic threat is instantaneous, cold, and utterly ruthless. By the following morning, the highest-ranking constitutional scholars, Military advisors and intelligence chiefs are summoned to a secure, swept vault beneath Buckingham Palace to assemble a document that is now whispered about in the darkest corners of Westminster: the red leather dossier. This is not a mere legal briefing. It is a 150-page memorandum compiled directly by the most senior, uncompromising members of the Privy Council. It serves as a staggering, irrefutable catalogue of perceived treasons, outlining a meticulous, ironclad legal framework to neutralise the Sussex threat permanently and without mercy. Central to this aggressive counterstrike is the invocation of a terrifyingly obscure legal mechanism known as Letters Patent Amendment 4B, working in tandem with the draconian Letters Patent 1917 Clause 2. This archaic, deeply buried constitutional clause, quietly drafted during the chaotic abdication crisis of 1936, but never officially utilised, grants the reigning monarch the unilateral, absolute power to retroactively strip royal titles, dissolve hereditary patronages, and immediately freeze all associated sovereign trust funds without the need for parliamentary oversight or public debate. The Red Dossier outlines exactly how this nuclear option will be deployed, utilising a modern, weaponised application of a Privy Council writ of attainder to sever all legal, financial and blood ties between the Sussexes and the Crown. As the heavy, red leather-bound dossier is placed upon the King's desk, the archetypal battle lines are drawn in permanent ink. On one side stands Prince William, the duty-bound heir, whose knuckles turn white with unyielding, righteous fury as he reads the intercepted manuscript, viewing his brother no longer as a misguided sibling, but as an active, hostile enemy of the state who must be crushed. On the other side is the spectre of Prince Harry, the exiled provocateur, seemingly willing to burn down the entire ancient institution to fuel his lucrative Hollywood machinery. And caught in the centre of this impending constitutional war is the agonizing, inescapable shadow of the late Princess Diana. Deep within the dense legal labyrinth of the Red Dossier, buried under layers of suffocating constitutional jargon, lies a chilling, highly classified reference to a private, handwritten letter penned by Diana herself in 1995. A letter detailing her darkest, most prophetic fears that her two beloved boys would one day tear the monarchy apart from the inside. We will soon reveal the exact, heartbreaking phrasing of that hidden letter and the devastating, world-altering contents of page 42. But first, we must pull you inside the locked, soundproof doors of Clarence House, where the visceral, physical confrontation that finally severed a brotherhood forever is about to echo through the haunted corridors of history. To truly understand how the Windsor Directive was forged, we must step past the velvet ropes and armed royal guards, moving directly into the soundproofed sanctuary of Clarence House at precisely 8 p.m. on October 15th. The rain beat, a rhythmic, ominous cadence against the grand sash windows. But inside, the air was hot, stagnant, and filled with a suffocating tension. Standing near the towering marble fireplace, Prince William's posture was rigid, his knuckles turning porcelain white as his hands gripped the back of an antique mahogany armchair, so hard the wood groaned under the pressure. Across the room sat King Charles, looking agonizingly frail beneath the burden of the crown, his face etched with deep, sorrowful lines. A monarch trapped in the ultimate tragic dilemma between the love for his prodigal son and his sacred, sworn duty to protect the British realm. Positioned silently in the shadowy corners of the room were three high-ranking members of the Privy Council and the sovereign's principal private secretary, holding the leather-bound dossier like a death warrant. A high-stakes satellite communications link had been established, connecting Clarence House directly to the Sussexes' Montecito compound. What transpired next was not a diplomatic negotiation, but an explosive, visceral shouting match that shook the historic walls of the estate. When the Sussex camp attempted to play their final card, offering to suppress the catastrophic financial memoir in exchange for an unprecedented, permanent, $60 million tax-exempt annuity, and guaranteed diplomatic security immunities, Prince William's restraint completely shattered. His voice echoed through the ancient corridors, a razor-sharp command demanding an immediate, absolute cessation of all financial blackmail against the crown. William made it unequivocally clear to the gathered council that the monarchy could no longer exist in a state of permanent hostage negotiation, declaring that if the king would not act to sever the toxic umbilical cord once and for all, the Prince of Wales would consider the institution compromised beyond repair before he ever inherited the throne. The room fell into a terrifying, dead silence. The physical toll on the king was immediate and heartbreaking. His breathing came in laboured, heavy gasps, his head sinking into his hands as the realization washed over him that his family was beyond saving. The choice had been stripped down to its bare, brutal essence: sacrifice the monarchy or sacrifice his youngest child. Standing upright with a sudden, tragic resolve, King Charles motioned to the senior Privy Councillor. The red dossier was opened upon the table, its thick parchment pages illuminated by the warm, dim light of the desk lamp. The legal machinery of permanent exile was set into motion. The council began reading aloud the constitutional mechanisms contained within Letters Patent Amendment 4B, their clinical, unforgiving words cutting through the tense atmosphere like a scalpel. Every clause was designed to strip away royal status with surgical precision, reducing titles to meaningless historical footnotes and legally severing all rights to sovereign inheritance. As the advisors turned the pages, they reached the deeply classified appendix, the emotional heart of the red dossier, which contained the digitized transcript of Princess Diana's private 1995 handwritten letter. Written in her distinct, elegant cursive script during the darkest days of her separation, Diana had penned a haunting, almost mystical warning, foreseeing a future where the relentless pressure of media, greed, and unresolved resentment would pit her two sons against each other in a battle that would consume the 1,000-year-old throne. Reading those words aloud in the quiet sanctuary of Clarence House was the final, devastating blow. The late princess's tragic prophecy had come to pass, not through external enemies, but through the bitter, irreversible fractures within her own bloodline. The emotional shield that had protected the Sussexes for years, the king's overwhelming guilt over the tragic loss of their mother, was transformed in that singular moment into the very justification needed to execute the ultimate act of constitutional preservation. By 11:30 p.m., the legal instruments were fully prepared, drafted in pristine copperplate handwriting on heavy vellum paper. The document was titled The Emergency Order of Severance under the Windsor Directive. It outlined 4 non-negotiable, irreversible actions. First, the immediate, total freezing of the $45 million sovereign trust fund established for Prince Harry and his heirs. Second, the retroactive revocation of all remaining royal patronages, military titles, and HRH designations. Third, the permanent removal of the Sussex name from the Royal Archives' active duty roster, placing them under an official decree of permanent administrative exile. And fourth, the execution of Clause 42, the infamous page 42 of the Red Dossier. As the clock ticked relentlessly toward midnight, King Charles picked up his personal fountain pen, the heavy sovereign tool used to sign Acts of Parliament and royal decrees. His hand trembled for a brief, agonizing second, a father's final hesitation before cutting down his own legacy. But under the resolute, unwavering gaze of Prince William, the duty-bound heir who stood firm as the guardian of the crown's future, the king lowered the nib to the paper. With a swift, definitive stroke of blue ink, King Charles signed the Emergency Order of Severance. The grand room remained utterly still as the clock struck midnight, the heavy sound reverberating through the ancient stone corridors of Windsor Castle. It was at that exact moment that the decree was officially transmitted to royal security teams on the ground. Outside, the Sussex emissary, who had arrived hours earlier with an aggressive legal ultimatum, was handed a crimson-sealed folder by elite royal protection officers. His diplomatic access revoked, his official security detail disbanded. He was physically escorted off the sovereign estate under the pouring rain, his luxury sedan speeding away into the dark Berkshire countryside, with tyres screeching against wet asphalt. The physical severance was complete. The historical nightmare was just beginning. The $45 million sovereign trust fund, accumulated over decades of royal inheritance, was instantly locked inside the Bank of England's highest security vault, frozen under the direct, unappealable authority of the Privy Council. And then came the execution of page 42, the most explosive, destructive paragraph in the entire Red Dossier. A secret clause that had been guarded with ultimate security until this very night. Page 42 did not merely handle finances or existing titles. It triggered an immediate, automatic legal mechanism invoking the Royal Marriages and Succession Act protocols. Paragraph 42 explicitly mandated the permanent, retroactive erasing of Prince Harry and his children, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet, from the official line of succession to the British throne. It declared that any individual who actively engages in hostile, financial or psychological warfare against the reigning monarch forfeits all natural, hereditary rights to the crown, severing the royal bloodline's legal continuity forever. Furthermore, page 42 ordered the complete seizure and total international ban of all commercial trademarks, intellectual property, and media domain names incorporating the word royal or Windsor, registered by the Sussexes anywhere in the world, dismantling their multi-million-dollar global branding campaign in a single legal strike. As the news of the Windsor Directive begins to trickle through the secret channels of Westminster, the United Kingdom stands on the precipice of an unprecedented constitutional storm. While the King holds the sovereign authority to issue emergency decrees and freeze private royal trusts, the complete, permanent removal of an individual from the line of succession ultimately requires a formal Act of Parliament, ratified by both the House of Commons and the House of Lords, as well as the Commonwealth realms. A fierce shadow war is now erupting behind the closed doors of Parliament. Constitutional loyalists are preparing to rush the emergency severance bill through the floor of the Commons, while opposition factions argue that stripping titles and hereditary rights without a public trial sets a dangerous, tyrannical precedent that could threaten the very democratic fabric of the nation. Prime Minister officials are bracing for a high court battle that could paralyze the government for months. In California, the response to the Windsor Directive is expected to be swift, litigious, and explosive. Reports indicate that top-tier international human rights attorneys and constitutional litigators are being assembled in Los Angeles to file an immediate, multi-billion-dollar counter-lawsuit against the Privy Council and the British Crown in European and international courts. The Sussexes are allegedly preparing to release the full, unredacted draft of the intercepted financial memoir directly to global press networks, throwing open the doors to the royal vault and burning down the remaining bridges of discretion. The feud has officially transcended a personal family tragedy. It has mutated into an all-out war between an ancient, thousand-year-old empire fighting for its survival and a modern celebrity empire willing to use total media destruction to claim its victory. Left dangling in the center of this titanic, destructive conflict is the uncertain, tragic fate of Archie and Lilibet. Born into royal lineage, yet raised in total exile. Their titles, heritage, and future within the House of Windsor now hangs by a microscopic thread. Will Parliament ratify the decree and strip the innocent children of their prince and princess titles, sealing their exile for generations to come? Or will a public backlash force King Charles to stay his hand before the final parliamentary vote takes place? The tension within the royal family has reached a critical breaking point, and the consequences of this midnight decree will ripple through history for centuries to come. This conflict is far from over, and as new classified intelligence and leaked palace memos emerge, we will bring you every single explosive development before it is censored. The battle for the future of the British monarchy is being fought right now in the dark. Do not let the truth be buried under palace propaganda. If you want to stay ahead of the narrative, make sure to smash that like button right now, leave your thoughts in the comments on whether King Charles went too far, and hit the subscribe button with all notifications turned on. Share this video with everyone you know, and stay tuned for our next deep dive investigation as we unveil the secret parliamentary votes that could change the global power structure forever.